why Akainu versus Dragon is the real final fight everyone's ignoring, the One Piece theory that's been hiding in plain sight. Why do we think Akainu versus Dragon is inevitable? Look, I know what you're thinking. Another Akainu theory? Let me guess. Luffy's gonna punch the Magma Man for killing Ace. But hold up. What if I told you that the real final showdown isn't Luffy versus Akainu at all? What if Oda's been setting up something completely different right under our noses? A great guy over on subreddit Pirate Folk dropped this theory that honestly blew my mind, and after diving deep into the evidence, I'm convinced they're onto something huge. While everyone's expecting the obvious matchups, Oda might be preparing to deliver the fight we never saw coming, but absolutely should have. Here's our case in 4 key points. The Ohara connection, a shared tragedy that set them on collision course. Kuzan as the mirror, the path Dragon didn't take, and thank God for that. Family drama gets real. When you mess with Dragon's kids, pacifism goes out the window. Oda's magic number 3, the pattern that seals the deal. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be wondering how we all missed this setup. Let's break it down. Okay, so we all know the Ohara Incident was tragic, right? Scholars got burned alive for reading some old rocks, and Robin's been traumatized ever since. But here's what most people miss. This incident didn't just shape Robin and Kuzan's lives. It created the fundamental divide between our 2 future opponents. Picture this. Akainu, young and already ruthlessly committed to his absolute justice, literally ordered the destruction of a refugee ship full of innocent civilians. His logic? Can't risk even one scholar escaping with forbidden knowledge. Classic Akainu move. When in doubt, burn everything down. The man doesn't do half measures, and honestly, that's both terrifying and oddly respectable in a villainous way. Meanwhile, Dragon witnessed this government-sanctioned massacre and basically said, yeah, no, this system is broken beyond repair. The Revolutionary Army's entire existence stems from incidents like Ohara, where the world government's idea of justice became completely indistinguishable from tyranny. So you've got this perfect setup. Akainu caused the tragedy that inspired Dragon's life mission. One man's necessary sacrifice became another man's call to revolution. It's like Akainu lit the fuse and Dragon's been building the bomb ever since. And can we talk about the symbolism here? Akainu's red magma, literally the flames that consumed Ohara, versus Dragon's green wind, representing hope and change rising from the ashes. Oda doesn't do coincidences, people. When he picks colors this deliberately, you know something's brewing. This isn't just ideological opposition, it's personal. Every innocent life lost to absolute justice since Ohara has only made Dragon more determined while convincing Akainu he's on the right path. They're both looking at the same world and reaching completely opposite conclusions about how to fix it. Here's where things get really interesting. You know how Dragon used to be a Marine? Probably destined for greatness, the whole 9 yards? Well, Kuzan basically lived out Dragon's what-if story, and it ended exactly how you'd expect in a world where Akainu runs the show. Think about it. Both Dragon and Kuzan were Garp's protégés. Both had the potential to become Fleet Admiral, and both eventually realized the Marines don't actually serve justice. They serve the world government's interests. The key difference? Dragon was smart enough to leave early, while Kuzan tried to change the system from within. Kuzan's entire Admiral career was probably what Dragon might have looked like if he'd stayed. A more compassionate leader, someone who questioned orders when they seemed wrong, actually caring about protecting innocents over following protocol. But then Punk Hazard happened, and Akainu literally and figuratively froze those dreams solid. Now here's the kicker. Kuzan's working with Blackbeard, and everyone thinks he's secretly allied with the Revolutionary Army. Sound familiar? That's 2 of Garp's sons who ended up as criminals because they couldn't stomach Akainu's vision of justice. Dragon saw the writing on the wall and left. Kuzan tried to fight from within and got destroyed for it. Every time Dragon looks at what happened to Kuzan, it probably reinforces why he chose revolution over reform. You can't fix a broken system from the inside when the guy running it thinks your compassion is weakness. Akainu didn't just reject their ideals. He actively destroyed anyone who tried to implement them. It's like Kuzan is Dragon's reflection in a funhouse mirror, showing exactly why walking away was the right choice. Sometimes the system is so corrupt that trying to reform it just makes you complicit in its crimes. Now let's talk about what's really going to push Dragon over the edge, because despite all his revolutionary rhetoric, this man is fundamentally a family guy. And Akainu? Well, he's made it very personal. Dragon might be the world's most wanted criminal, but he's also surprisingly restrained for someone with that title. The man could probably level islands if he wanted to, but instead he works in shadows, supports local uprisings, tries to change hearts and minds. Very noble, very patient, very unpirate-like, honestly. But then Marineford happened, and Akainu crossed a line that you simply don't cross with Dragon. First, he traumatized Luffy so badly that the kid still bears physical and psychological scars. That chest wound, it's not just a battle scar, it's a permanent reminder of his greatest failure. The emotional damage was so severe it took 2 years of training just to get back in the game. And here's the real kicker. Akainu specifically pursued Luffy because he was Dragon's son. Talk about making it personal. Despite maintaining distance for Luffy's safety, Dragon's been secretly watching his son's progress this whole time. Ivankov keeps catching him staring toward home, and we learn from Kuma's flashback that Dragon was sneaking visits throughout Luffy's childhood. When he talks about Luffy, you can hear the genuine pride and excitement about their eventual reunion. This isn't some absent father. This is a dad who sacrificed personal happiness to protect his family. Then there's Sabo, Dragon's other son, the boy he personally saved and trained. Given Sabo's connection to Ace and his flame powers, there's a real possibility Akainu might target him next. Dragon's already watched one of his boys get brutalized by this madman. He's not going to let it happen again. Here's what makes this setup brilliant. It transforms Dragon from a distant revolutionary leader into a father protecting his family. When a pacifist finally chooses violence, it's usually because someone threatened what they love most. And brother, Akainu has been poking this particular dragon, pun intended, for way too long. The moment Dragon decides Akainu is too dangerous to leave alive, the world's about to discover why he's considered the most dangerous criminal on the planet. Hell hath no fury like a revolutionary father scorned. Alright, time for some serious Oda pattern recognition, because this man loves his threes more than most people love pizza. And trust me, Oda's been pulling this rule of 3 magic since day 1. Remember the 3 original Devil Fruit types? Paramecia, Zone, Logia? Or how about the 3 great powers of the world? Marines, Warlords, and Emperors. The man's obsessed with balance, and when it comes to the original Admirals, the pattern is crystal clear. Throughout the entire series, Oda has maintained the exact same order for the OG Admirals: Akainu, Kizaru, Kuzan. Introduction order, heights, seating arrangements, you name it. This isn't coincidence. This is deliberate structure building towards something big. And just like how the Monster Trio always fights in order, Zoro takes the second strongest, Sanji the third, Luffy the main boss, Oda's setting up the same pattern with these Admiral fights. Now look at the major Admiral confrontations. Kuzan versus Garp. Hachinosu. Heartbreaking family drama. Kizaru versus Luffy. Egghead. Old Guard versus New Generation. Akainu versus Dragon. Coming soon to theaters near you. See the pattern? Each fight serves a different thematic purpose and escalates the emotional stakes. Kuzan versus Garp was about surrogate family, torn apart by conflicting loyalties. Kizaru versus Luffy explored the clash between duty and personal morality. Akainu versus Dragon will be the ultimate ideological collision. 2 extreme worldviews that cannot coexist. The progression is perfect. Personal relationships, moral flexibility, and finally, pure ideological warfare. By the time we reach Akainu versus Dragon, we're not just watching 2 strong guys punch each other, we're witnessing the collision of 2 incompatible visions for the world's future. This pattern also explains why Luffy versus Akainu feels less inevitable than everyone assumes. Luffy's big Admiral fight was with Kizaru, representing his growth and proving he can hang with the top tier. Dragon vs. Akainu serves a completely different narrative purpose, showing what happens when unstoppable force meets immovable object. Plus, the symbolism is just chef's kiss. Red versus green. Natural opposites. Two men the same age suggesting equality rather than mentorship, and both connected to Garp through his lost sons. When Oda sets up patterns this consistently, especially his beloved rule of threes, the payoff is guaranteed. The rule of threes doesn't lie, folks. Akainu versus Dragon isn't just possible, it's mathematically inevitable. Look, I'll be honest, when I first heard this theory, I was skeptical. Everyone expects Luffy to be the one who takes down Akainu, right? It's the obvious choice, the crowd-pleasing matchup, the revenge story we've been building toward since Marineford. But that's exactly why it won't happen. Oda doesn't do obvious. He does thematically perfect, emotionally devastating, and completely unexpected. And Akainu versus Dragon, that's all three. When this fight finally happens, it won't just be about personal revenge or proving who's stronger. It will be about determining what kind of world emerges from the current system's ashes. Akainu's absolute justice represents order at any cost, while Dragon's revolution represents necessary change, regardless of the chaos it brings. The flames that consumed Ohara 22 years ago will finally meet the winds of change that have been building ever since. When Dragon's legendary patience finally snaps and his restraint disappears, the world will learn why he's truly the most wanted man alive. And when Akainu faces someone who matches his conviction but completely opposes his methods, we'll see whether absolute justice can survive against a revolution that refuses to be extinguished. The world's most wanted criminal versus the fleet admiral of absolute justice. A father's love versus a soldier's duty. The winds of change versus the flames of order. This is the fight that will define what justice actually means in One Piece. And honestly, I can't wait to see who's still standing when the smoke clears. What do you think? Are you buying into this theory, or do you still think Luffy's getting his revenge match? Let me know in the comments, and if this analysis changed your mind about the Final Wars matchups, smash that like button and subscribe for more One Piece theories that'll blow your mind. The revolution will not be televised, but it will be animated, and it's going to be absolutely epic.